All right, everybody. Thank you for coming in today. Today, we're going to be kind of going over life insurance. We've been doing some good stuff with real estate, talking about how you flip houses and things. But today, we're going to switch it up, and we're going to kind of go into life insurance. I got my great friend Patrick Knouse coming on, and we're going to just dive into the benefits of being able to use life insurance not only for joining right now. I appreciate you being here, taking some time. We're going to give some great information as it comes to being able to acquire life insurance. Patrick, how are you, sir?
Yo, what's up, Mark?
Hey, man. Thank you for being on. Thank you for taking the time. Everyone, this is my great friend, Patrick Knouse. We met each other as my son played basketball at the same high school that his daughter went to, and she was on the pep team, and we would always sit by each other during the games, and we started to talk. And I want to thank you. You purchased a copy of my book after our conversations, and you would always give me great feedback, and we would talk about financial matters. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of bring some of our wonderful conversation that we kind of have in private here to a larger audience so they can benefit from some of the wisdom that you have and the benefits that I've always enjoyed from having conversations with you.
Man, I appreciate that. It's crazy how two dudes from two separate places in one spot kind of our energy really attracted each other, I think. And so thank you for those kind sentiments, Mark. It kind of really, when I reflect on it now, it was been about a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I'm on the right direction in life if you attract those type of people like Mark, and that kind of lets you know, because otherwise you wouldn't attract them, right? And so that's when I reflect on it. I'm like, man. And at this point, I can absolutely call you a friend. We hook up outside of there. We're able to go out and eat lunch. It's great, man. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, that brought us together, but definitely our like-mindedness is what keeps us together.
Together, you got it.
Great, man. Iron sharpens iron.
That's it.
All right. So what I always love to do on these high-value conversations is I think it takes a long time sometimes for podcasts and stuff to get to the point. So we're going to go into your bio, but first I want to ask you an important question about the topic so that people who only can be here for a moment really get some value. So I want to ask you, when it comes to life insurance, because that's what we're going to be talking about today, do you think everyone should get life insurance?
Well, that's a great question. I think that anybody that's breathing oxygen needs to get life insurance, because there's one guarantee in life, and that's that you're going to die. Yeah. And so when you really break that down, it's not just about protecting yourself while you're here on earth. It really is not leaving the burden to anybody when you're no longer here anymore. And that takes that takes something of thinking outside of yourself, right? And really to begin to think about that next generation. And I'll talk today about some of the things that life insurance can do, not only while you're alive, but after you're gone, and how it's able to help protect some of that, what I call it generational wealth, and leaving a financial legacy in your family. So I look forward to having that conversation. But in a short answer, absolutely. Whether you're a blue collar worker, whether you're super wealthy, I mean, you got to have life insurance.
No, for sure.
Some type.
So thank you, everybody, for being on here, and I fully agree with you. I think that life insurance is something that's really important. I think it's something that the reason why I wanted to even have this call with the people that follow me and in my audience, as I continue to bring them high value conversations. I want them to be able to kind of have the experience that Josh had in Read Me or Stay Broke. As they come through me, they're able to meet with the people that are in my network and hear the questions answered and learn things that they might not have access to, and access to the people that they might not have access to. So thank you for being one of my close, trusted friends, someone that I look up to and feel like delivers value. And I want to ask, so tell me, how did you get into helping people when it comes to life insurance? How did you get into life insurance?
Well, you remember, Mark, back when you had a career day in school?
Yes.
You remember the long line for life insurance agents? Nah, man. It's a fallback industry. back then I was going to the fire department, you know, thinking I was going to be a firefighter. I know you're a veteran. You know, I was like, I want to be in the military, that type of thing. Sure wasn't be a life insurance agent. So how it ended up happening, though, to kind of take you back is I got out of the service, and, you know, I was in the construction union. So I was actually a sheet metal worker in the construction union. So I went through an apprenticeship program. My father-in-law got me into that. And little did I know, actually, the company I worked for, well, we served like unions, credit unions, and association members. So I owned a policy from this company years before I ever worked with the company that I'm contracted with. So, you know, just kind of how life goes. And, you know, I have my wife, I've got my daughter, my wife's in private nursing school. And I'm like, you know, I'm making good money. You know, I mean, I was making $1,400-1,500 a week with good benefits, but I wanted to kind of provide a little bit of relief to my family. And so I wanted to get a part-time job. That's how I started, is I thought I was going to go get a part-time job. And I was up one night and I found an ad advertising for a career opportunity. I never created a resume in my life. I never really needed one. It's not always what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
Right? So I never had created a resume. And so the next morning my wife got up and I'm like, hey, can you make me a resume? She's for what? And so she she got me a resume put together. I had to shave off, no shave November, and then went into an interview super uncomfortable. If you know anybody listening that knows me, well, you know, I'm sitting here in a jacket and a button up. They would have never even thought of me in this way. I mean, the only suit I probably ever wore was to like a wedding, when somebody rented it. It's a 7th-story penthouse suite, and I'm like, I'm shaking. I'm like, oh my gosh! Now I've been to war, and I'm over here sweating bullets going into this corporate office, into this interview, thinking, I think I'm out of my element. I might have made a mistake here, and they were dumb enough to hire me, and I had to get a license at that point, and I made it about 3 weeks doing insurance. And I went down to my union hall and I told them, hey, you guys I don't need to come back here. So you can pull my union card. I don't need a job with you guys anymore. And the rest is kind of history. And there's more to that. The first couple of years of business, we might be able to get into that, but there's some good storyline to that. But that's how it started. It was just off a whim to get a second job.
Man, that's a great origin story. I mean, that's how a lot of things happen, Like you said, you just kind of followed this kind of inner calling of, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then the opportunity kind of presented itself. And I mean, like years later now, that first step led to, a great journey. I want to say, similarly, first I want to give you credit for being a veteran as well. That's something that we definitely have in common. For sure. And I thank you for your service, But I remember life insurance was actually the first way I even learned about anything about financial education. I was working at Whole Foods as a cashier, and I know people get like nervous about pyramid schemes and stuff like that. But a guy came to me and was like, hey man, we're having a meeting tonight, if you want to come. I think I was 17 years old, and I went to the meeting. But at the meeting, they did a presentation about how with term life insurance, you can have, a certain amount of insurance, and then you can kind of, manage the rest of your bills. I learned about the rule of 72, and they were talking about being able to have life insurance policies that also had some type of stock portfolio to go with it. And people were getting their life insurance licenses as well as their Series 7. And I was like, whoa. Like, I was just bagging groceries this morning. You know what I mean? I was like, it opened up a whole new world for me, which kind of, put me on the awareness path of finances where I am now. That was my first even door opening into being able to see a higher level of the way money worked and things that people buy, because at the time I only had my, accidental life insurance policy at work. If I get some boxes falling off me going down the aisle or something, So I really think that this is such an important topic, and how you got into it is super interesting. So let me ask you this. what do you think holds people back from taking the important steps into getting a actual life insurance policy, not just what is kind of tied to their job or kind of just presented to them? What do you feel like is the thing that like holds people back the most?
Yeah, a couple of things. That's a great question. First off, I would say, no offense, but probably ignorance is really where it begins. And when I say ignorance, just not really knowing where to start, and or not knowing what is actually good for them and their family. And so I think a lot of times, and I was like this a lot and been like that in my life a lot of times, where not knowing questions to ask, not knowing who to ask. So not knowing a company or not knowing somebody in the industry maybe. And so having that fear of kind of going outside of themselves and looking at, hey, what can benefit me, what can benefit my family. And then I would also tell you along those lines of trust. So when you think of the insurance industry, there's a stigma, so to speak, when it comes to insurance. Says everybody knows somebody, I think, that had insurance, thought that insurance was good, and then that insurance wasn't good, right?
Right.
And a lot of that is not the insurance companies. A lot of that is the ignorance. I mean, there's over $1 billion of insurance every single year in America that goes unclaimed. And it's not because the insurance companies don't want to pay it out. It's simply because people don't designate proper beneficiaries, update estates, that type of thing. And so, or they don't file the claim, right? Because somebody did not educate that beneficiary. And that's something our company does a really good job of, Mark, is getting in contact with our policyholders every 12 to 18 months, because life changes, that type of thing, to try to help educate them on that. And so I think a lot of it is ignorance. A lot of it is trust, not knowing where to start, what company to go with, a representative in the field, so to speak. And then the other one I would tell you is probably feeling confident that their life insurance is good through their work.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that work insurance is what they call a benefit, right? So if you've been on planet Earth long enough, you know that a benefit can be given and it can be what? Taken away.
Definitely.
And so the fact that somebody shows up every day to go to a work, right, and thinks that that person is going to have their family's best interest when it's all said and done is when I think about that, it's kind of beyond me. And we always say that when you leave your workplace or employment, when you get fired, you leave your job, or you retire from your job, you lose your benefits.
No, for sure.
They don't stay with you, especially like, yeah, you might be able to keep some health insurance benefits, right? But life insurance, they typically don't. And so that's what I would tell you would be a big reason, Mark, a couple of things on why somebody doesn't go out and kind of help their family get protected, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a good point. Having that blind faith in the insurance that you're already provided. You kind of hear the word, you kind of sign the document because you're kind of trying to get to work. Sometimes that paperwork comes in your processing, right? So you haven't even really started working yet, and you're going and you're filling out all your documentation to work, and you're probably not gonna, put up too much of a fuss or ask too many questions about that insurance document because you're trying to get to the paycheck.
That blind faith.
Yeah, so you just hear, oh, okay, I got insurance. I signed up. You do all your benefits, right? But the other ones you kind of feel, right? So you do your dental, you pay your little piece for your eye, and you maybe have your health insurance, and then you got to sign your little accidental death life insurance policy, and you're like, I have all my insurances, and you can use the other three kind of throughout the year, but the life insurance policy is kind of like an afterthought. It's like, oh, it's there, and then I think the second part about that is, I don't think we like to think about death, and it's a fearful topic, and it's something that people kind of want to ignore as a fact. I'm glad that you started out today by saying that's like, the number one thing that we kind of know for certain in life when everything else is kind of uncertain. And I think to being able to address it head on and use life insurance as a way to kind of make it a positive event for the people around you versus kind of ignoring it or being fearful about the fact that you have to think about it. You know, it's something that we just kind of don't want to think about because it creates discomfort. But I think when you approach it with a plan this way, you kind of take the discomfort out of it a little bit. But I think just the topic itself being tied to, well, when does this work? When does this benefit me? Oh, you know, it benefits me after I'm gone. I think that kind of also is like maybe a block to taking it serious, you know. And then also it seems a long way away, right? So, you know, if you're, you know, younger or even in your, you know, middle age, you don't think about, you know, life insurance currently because it's so far away whenever that occurs. But if you're, you know, kind of putting, like you said, the right mentality towards it, you can acquire it now with purpose for others, you know, your loved ones. You know, you don't want to be a burden after the fact. And I think that that's really, you know, the real benefit. The additional benefit, I think, is that it can be life changing for the rest of your family. You, like you said, generational wealth can start at that moment. You know, you can be planning, this is how much money is going to go to my loved ones, and there's things that they can do with that after that could really change their lives, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man. You said a couple of things there. You know, you and I grew up kind of in that middle, like Gen X into millennial, right? That's kind of where we fell into play. So it was go to school. If you didn't go to college, right, then you better go get a job that has benefits. You know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, through I think around 2000, like during Obama's tenure, they put into place where you could ride on like your parents' insurance until you're like 26 years old if you're in school, right? So that was a transitional time where our mindset had let the company that we work for protect our families. You know, get that type of job, and that's not so much the case anymore. And so I think you hit a great point there. And on top of that, you said protecting, like it could be a future investment for generations. And I talked to you or said earlier, like generational wealth and leaving a financial legacy. I mean, think about it this way. Like, why do the Rockefellers or, you know, why do the Bill Gateses and the J.C. Penney's and the Ray Krocs, and why do they protect all of their generational wealth through insurance? And it's real simple, really. You got like, you know, first off, it's tax-free.
Yeah.
You know, so that money goes to the next generation tax-free. And so one thing they know about money is don't, and you know this in real estate, right? Like, it's not just the money you make in real estate. It's the way you protect your money through real estate. Me and you have talked that, and we've talked a little bit about that, and you kind of know some of my direction and vision on that. So on my end, but this also does that. It helps protect some of those, and depending on state you're in, obviously, inheritance tax, capital gains tax, those types of things. That's how they protect their generational wealth. So you nailed it, man. So
We talked about what we feel like is like people's block, right? So, you know, fear, comfort, ignorance. Diving a little more kind of like in the ignorance, what do you think is like what do you think are some of the like common misconceptions about life insurance itself? Like, what do you think are some things that people think that you would like to kind of maybe clarify or help them understand in a beneficial way?
Yeah, I think we've hit on one of those, and that's being life insurance is good through work, right? That's the number one, I think, Mark, misconception about life insurance. Another one, you know, and we hit on this, you know, the younger life insurance, it's not wealth that gets life insurance, it's your health. And so it favors the young and the healthy, not the wealthy, right? So the earlier, there's a misconception of, and I hear this a lot, like, I'm young, I'm single, right? That type of thing. I don't need insurance. I'll get it later on. What happens is life changes. You know, nobody thought like in 2020 that there'd be a global pandemic and, you know, you would have COVID-19 into effect. And all of a sudden, Mark, you're 20 years old and you're diagnosed with COVID-19, and, you know, you have an appointment with the insurance man, and I find out that you had COVID-19 last month, and you can't get insurance for 3 months, or you can't get insurance for 6 months. So it didn't take long for insurance companies to adjust and pivot and say, hey, we've got a problem here, right?
Yeah.
And so they had to take that into the risk verification, is what they call that. And now even more so, I mean, from, you know, in my opinion, it's going to come into our insurance qualifications in the near future, from the vaccinations to the COVID-19. That stuff's going to come into play, right? So I'm young, I'm healthy, I don't need it. Well, the earlier you get into it, the more value you're going to have later on down the line, right? I would tell you another misconception is it's too expensive for me.
Oh, for sure.
You know, it's a lot of people are afraid to get into it because of what the investment is to get that rolling. And so for me, one way I try to break it down to members and the individuals that I train and develop is the average American family will set aside anywhere between 4 up to 6%. 6% is about average of their income. So just kind of think about it this way. Like, if you're making $2,000 a month, right? Just so to speak, if you're just average family, that's only $120. That's a cell phone bill.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
So if you set aside $120 or 6% of your income, this is going to set you up to protect a lot more income later on, and to where family's not trying to pull it out of pocket down the line. Because, you know, when you go to when somebody passes away, I just had a member the other day. Their child was 34 years old and passed away right before Christmas. And
wow.
And so I was helping them with a claim and that type of thing, and they didn't expect that, right? And you know, I told them when I seen them, I said, you know, when I first protected this family, I told them, I said, when you go to a funeral home, one of the first things that funeral director is going to ask you is, how are you going to pay for this funeral? Cash or insurance? They don't want you to say cash, because most people don't have, you know, $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 tucked away in a drawer in cash. And if they do, the last person they want to give it to is a funeral director. You know,
Yeah.
They want you to say insurance. And so what happens is they say, well, where's the policy, or how much is the coverage? And they want to know that, because once you tell them, oh, it's a $50,000 policy, what do you think is going to happen to the funeral? It's going to go up.
Right.
And so to protect that, like we have something in my company, like a freedom of choice, that helps to where you give them that certificate, and that way they cannot tell you, they can't upcharge you, so to speak. Once you have a pre-negotiated rate, that rate's locked in. They call our home office. We don't give them all the insurance. All the rest goes to the beneficiary. The reason I bring that member up is what happened is that 34-year-old, right? Because we was talking about young people that don't need it, right? So that 34-year-old passes away. Well, the family in that time forgot the instructions that I gave them, and gave them both policies.
Wow.
So, yeah, the funeral director was trying to take too much money from them.
Yeah, but he was.
Yeah. So, you know, one, that's a misconception. Here's another one, and I'll turn it back over to you, but would be, I have pre-existing conditions, you know, I'm going to be disqualified. Mm. And so one of the great things about insurance, there's policies for everybody. And I'll tell you, there's a company out there probably for everyone that can probably get protected. Yeah. So every company has different regulations depending on the way their policies are set up, so on and so forth. And so there's a company out there that can get you protected. Like a lot of times seniors have a hard time getting insurance. Like my company, you know, we have senior programs. It's a limited underwriting. So you're able to get into coverage where maybe you couldn't have before, just simply off the different type of underwriting obligations. So don't let that discourage you. And then the last one I would tell you as well is that one I just spoke about is insurance companies pay out their claims, but a lot of people have a misconception that they don't.
Yeah.
You know, are trying to swindle out of it. They're not. It's a highly regulated industry.
For sure.
Insurance is highly regulated. That's why people like Warren Buffett is one of our top shareholders of our company.
Wow.
And if you know anything about Warren Buffett, he's big into insurance.
Definitely.
So, it's highly regulated.
I have a question here. Patera is asking a question. Thank you for being here, Patera. She wants to know what she would like for us to speak about how estate taxes are impacted of life insurance proceeds. She says, could you speak to estate taxes and how it impacts life insurance proceeds?
Yeah, that's a good question. Kind of goes back to, I think she might have just popped on, but life insurance is tax-free. And so therefore, any additional, like say somebody's got some wealth built up, right? You could protect your wealth so that way that money's coming into your family tax-free. So it's kind of a hedge, so to speak, against that, right? So, I mean, that's the simplest way that I could explain it. You're just hedging your money.
I like how you put that. Patera, thank you for that question. So I want to ask you this. I'm going to ask you two questions, but I'm going to do them in sequence. One, I'm going to ask you, how can people get life insurance? And then I'm going to ask you, how do they know they're getting a good policy? So let's go like that.
So how can they get life insurance?
Someone get life insurance? I mean, because some people don't know because they're waiting for someone to come tell them, or they're used to getting it by their job. So if they're listening to us right now and they're seeing the benefit in what we're saying, how can they act upon it?
Yeah, well, first thing, I mean, if you're listening to us, all you got to do is DM me, right? So that's an easy one, Mark.
That's what you're here for, because you're my trusted source, right? So first and foremost.
If I'm going to be non-biased, right, you could probably go online and just about any insurance company you could submit that you're looking for insurance, and I would say your phone's probably going to blow up. Right now, we're a little bit different. So I'm saying that on here, Mark, or I'm like, DM me. Well, I'm a union member myself, so I could sponsor you into our program because we work solely with unions, credit unions, and associations. Kind of goes back to that, what I was talking about earlier. I mean, most people have heard of like UPS. You get packages delivered. Well, you know as well as I do, Mark, UPS has always had some of the best benefits, right? But they work with us. Yeah. So that their members are protected outside of the workplace or employment. And so, we don't advertise. We don't do any of that stuff. But you could go on our website if you wanted to. But yeah, that would be a good start. And what was your second question?
Yeah. So how do they know they're getting a good policy? So kind of just diving into the addressing your needs, thinking about what you would want to need, and then, sometimes not knowing the right question. Because what I've found with my whole spiel about financial education and stuff is the thing that kind of bothered me a lot about financial stuff is that because a person goes into it really not knowing what they don't know, they rely on the person selling them something to inform them if it's good or not. And we do have laws in place, fiduciary laws, in place that when you're supposed to be representing someone, you're supposed to be coming from, the best possible, most honest place and put yourself in their shoes. But we also know the reason why we even said earlier that sometimes insurance people or salespeople in general get a bad rap, even real estate agents, is because I have a commission tied to this. So if I have a commission tied to something I'm selling you, if you are uneducated coming, how can you have a check and balance against me to know that you're getting what you need for yourself, not what I need you to get to help me pay my bills? So how can someone know they're getting a good policy?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. So, get educated. Find somebody that can help educate you first off. And so like specifically a good way to find out what your needs are is a lot of companies do a needs, like what we call a financial needs analysis. So there's really 4 like key financial assets that an average individual, and I say average, I came from a blue collar family. So understand, like you've got like your final expenses, right? That's one thing that you have to look for. What happens when you die? So you're not on a, used to it was a milk jug, right? Type of thing, or at the convenience store, help us out. Now it's a GoFundMe. You're not getting a GoFundMe account. Nobody's after that. I mean, who wants to leave? Who wants to be the favorite uncle, right? Who wants to be the favorite uncle in the family? And then when you die, the last thing that they remember is he cost me $1,000, right? That's what they're going to remember. So you got final expenses. Another area that people need to pay attention and protect is their paycheck protection. So an average person needs to make sure that they have 3 to 5 years of their income protected.
That's a go. Okay.
So, here's another misconception for you. People, I hear this all the time. I've got $1 million policy, and I'm like, your income's $3,000 a month. No insurance company's protecting you for $1 million, right? I mean, there might be some out there, but they want to know, what is this going towards? You better have some assets that you're protecting. They're not just going to over-insure somebody, right?
Yeah.
And so usually it's 3 to 5 years of their paycheck being protected. Then you've got this thing that Mark's really good at building and growing. It's called homes, right? So mortgages. And so you got to have your mortgage protected. So that way your family doesn't have to move out of their house. Like if I pass, that way your family doesn't have to move out of their home. That might be your children's childhood home. And then the other one is college education, or setting your child up, as I like to say, maybe for an entrepreneurial career, right? And so leaving a little bit of nest egg for them to maybe have a little bit better start than what you did, so to speak. And so those would be like 4 areas, but how would you break down those areas would be the next, I guess, question to that, and know that you're getting the right type of policy. So I would say the best type of insurance to have is whole life insurance. Now, I know most people are familiar with whole life. So I always say, Mark, in your terms, whole life is like owning your home.
Right.
So when you own your home, as you pay on it, it gains equity. So you build up some cash into that policy, and that's where that other value in life insurance comes along.
All right, so good spot right here. I'm not trying to cut you off.
You're
we have a good question right here. Can you briefly explain the different types of life insurance, when they may be relevant during a person's lifetime? So you said whole. Let's contrast with what the other kind would be, and then you can keep going on whole and switch to the other kind.
Sure.
So I didn't want to cut off, but I thought it was a good time to do both right now before we go too deep into one. Let's set up the compare and contrast, and then let's recap both.
Yeah. So whole life is what it sounds like. It's for your whole life. So you need it when you're young, right? A lot of parents will take it out on their children when they're young, turn it over to them, because that's the least expensive that you can get insurance. So getting it while you're young, while you're healthy, and it's for your whole life. All right. It accumulates the cash value. So as I mentioned, it's like owning your home. It builds up equity in there. So several things happen when it comes to whole life insurance. Is it builds up cash. You can do several things with that cash. You can cash out the policy. If you cash out the policy, what happens is you lose the insurance, right? Or you can do what? You can borrow against it. All right. So if you borrow against it, it'll take away from the face amount until you pay that back. So you're leveraging. You've probably heard of this a lot of times, where people become their own bank, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right? I know that's thrown around TikTok and all that stuff. You just click on anything now to talk about that. And then the other thing, the other part of that would be is you can use it as a paid up option later on with the cash in that whole life. So usually 20 years into a policy, age 60, all insurance companies are different. Understand that. But 65 years old, age 70, a lot of people's retirement years, they don't want more bills. They want less bills. And so they'll take a paid up on their insurance and use that cash so they don't have to pay on their premiums ever again. And enjoy their golden years, so to speak.
Wow. So
right.
That's whole
life.
All right.
And then you got term. So term is going to be used, Mark, for you can use that for paycheck protection. Some use whole life for their paycheck protection if they're able to afford it, because whole life is a little more expensive.
So is the main difference between whole life and term that term is for a term of years, a certain amount of years you're insured, not insured anymore, but whole life is for completely your whole life, correct?
Yeah, let me elaborate on that too, Mark. So you nailed it. So term life is for exactly what it sounds like, term period of time. So I use the real estate analogy, not just because you're on here. I actually use this with my clients. I say term life is like renting your insurance. When you rent, you've got what they call a landlord. And so what happens when you have a landlord? Well, Mark comes along, and Mark's going to raise your rent up every year to 2 years. He's going to be like, oh yeah, right? Not as many houses are being bought right now. We're going to raise your rent. And so you got one of two choices. You can either pay the increased rent, or you could do what? Say no and go somewhere else. He provided you the shelter, right? And so it had a job. It provided you a shelter, but if you can't pay the rent, right? And so the landlord, when it comes to term insurance, is the insurance company. So depending on the terms of that term limit for 10, 20, 30 years, what happens is they come along and they say, hey, we provided you the shelter, but now since you're older, see, insurance is purchased at your attained age, Mark. And so if you're 30 years old when you get a 10-year term insurance, and when that term is up at 40 years old, you're now going to have to pay the 40-year-old's rate for the next 10 years. Now, here's the good news about term insurance. If let's say that you do get into insurance just by renting it, but you maybe affordability or something, and you want whole life, like some companies, I tell you, our company has this. It's called renewable and convertible term, to where you can convert it into a whole life policy at your attained age with no health questions. And so that's why what it does is it takes one of the risk factors out of it called health once you're locked in. So that's the difference. If you really, the two different types of life insurance would be whole life. That's protect your final expenses, get you some paid up options, that type of thing. And then term is going to protect mortgages, college education. Now understand, when I say term, only 1% of term insurance pays out, right? Nationally. So, and the reason it doesn't pay out, it's not because of the insurance company, once again, it's because like people stop paying on it when the terms are up.
Yeah, we actually had somebody in the chat earlier talk about they had a life insurance policy, and then 10 years later, the price went up, and then they couldn't afford it anymore. You know, and felt like the insurance company took advantage of them. But like you're saying right now, that's kind of what comes with it when you buy certain different types of insurance. You get the whole or the term, but that fine print, and then being able to talk to somebody about it and really understand what you're doing really helps.
For sure. That's why you get that trusted advisor, Mark, that can make sure you get locked in on a plan that's going to be there for your family.
So I'm going to ask you another question, but I think you covered it, so I want to reiterate what your answer. You kind of just expand a little bit. You said that, my question was going to be, how does a person know how much coverage they need? But when you said your financial needs analysis, that was great. Just to recap that, like you said, when you go before you get your insurance to answer our question of how much insurance do you know you need, like you said, your job, your expenses, your assets, you kind of look at what would need to be paid for if I wasn't here. You do that financial needs analysis. That's how you really kind of know how much you need coverage for.
Yes, sir. So breaking down like your final expenses, like what we do is I would ask you, how much insurance do you have through work, right? And we would take that into consideration, like, because work insurance is term insurance. It's not like it's bad, right? I don't ever beat up anybody's work insurance. I tell all my members, maximize it, because while you're working, it's a group plan, Mark. So they take the risk assessment. It's already pre-done based off of a group of individuals. So regardless of what your health conditions are, like you could have had cancer last year and you can get into the group plan. So it doesn't take any of that. And that's why it's the least expensive, right? Plus they also know that less than like 1% pays out, right? So the risk assessment is there, and you don't get to keep it when you leave.
Yeah.
And So you take
get
that
let
into
go.
consideration. Like, how much do you have kids? How much? You know, how many children do you have? What you need to set aside for college degrees? Typically about $100 grand. Yes, sir.
I like that. So you touched on this too. You talked about the health aspect when it comes to life insurance. So I'm going to actually just do healthy life habits have a benefit when it comes to your life insurance?
Oh, 100%. Yes, absolutely. Now, it's not to negate that if you have some conditions that you can't qualify, but 100%, the healthier you are, the better rate. Because, you know, you've heard me say this word a couple times: risk classification. And so the insurance company, when it comes to underwriting, has to take that into account, right? And so asthma, maybe you have asthma, stuff like that, right? That all comes into play. And so the good news is, like, life insurance doesn't go back, Mark, into your family. Like health insurance, they're going to ask you, you know, where's your family diagnosed with this, that type of thing. Life insurance is not that way. Or I should say, at least it's not with the company that I work with.
I know
Okay.
we hear about like every time I hear like, I always hear like, you know, when they're talking about not so much life insurance, but kind of when they're talking about health insurance and the country doing health insurance, or, you know, Obamacare stuff, they always talk about how they're doing something about pre-existing conditions. And I think that creating like a barrier for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I think here you're saying that it's not so much the case, because they're not going to go like all the way back in your family and see if there's something that you're probably going to be exposed to, more than they're looking at what you're actually doing right now or how you're living right now, and kind of your age and your more so your ability to die versus your ability to need care. Whereas health insurance, like, I need pre-existing condition because doing my risk assessment, like you would say, how much am I going to have to pay on you? A lot, because something's about to happen after this. More so life insurance is what's your, you know, risk of death based on how you're living.
Yep. Insurability. You know, what is your insurability based off of those things? So 100%. I mean, simple answer to that one is yes. That the better you take care of yourself, once again, there's one thing that's going to happen is we're all getting older. We've been on this call, I don't know, the last 30 minutes or so, and 40 minutes, and we all got older. You know what I mean? I can't get back the last 40 minutes of my life. And so my health is either getting worse, mostly, right? Very rarely is it getting better, unless maybe you got some bad health. Then you start making,
like they say,
different adjustments. And
like you say, you know, tomorrow's never promised to us either. And right quick, I want to shout out your daughter and my sons, because they are watching right now. That's a good sign. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good sign. They probably over there mocking us a little bit.
Hey, they learned something though.
They learned.
Look, they're like, man,
they learned it.
They tell the same stuff to us, to everybody else. You sure? You're damn right. You know?
Yeah, that's
all
it.
Right.
You know.
Let's switch gears a little bit. I know we're talking about in our title we have goals and habits, right? So healthy habits kind of ties into just overall habits, right? Because I think that me and you, we really have great conversations about mentality, about self-improvement, about habits. Like, we really love those topics, and it's always great to get together because we have that like-mindedness. So let me ask you, like, what is your mentality when it comes to like success?
Ooh, that's a great question, because when I think of success, you know, when I first like started this journey, and it's been a journey, Mark. I know it has been for you. You've shared your story. I love the picture the other day, you sitting on the plane. I'm like, look at that young Mark Jackson. That's it. So like something triggers in your mind. Like, I think when I remember back, Mark, when I was a child, like my definition of success was the nice cars. I remember my mom dated this guy, Mark, and I'm like, he took us out, and he was in a Jaguar, like the old school Jag, you know what I mean? But I remember sitting in the back seat of this car, and I'm like, this dude was rich, you know? And I'm like, this is what I want in life. I'm used to riding, and I'm in love with my dad, 1977 Ford pickup, you know? But this Jag's nice. So the first like car I bought when I started making it was a Jaguar.
Nice.
XJL. So I share that with you because initially my success was, so to speak, materialistic things. And everybody's definition of success is going to be different. And it's really wherever you're at, looking at where it is that you want to go in life. And so over time, I think for me, what success is defined to me now, Mark, is not only building and growing myself. Like I gotta love, I gotta appreciate myself. Success to me is being able to spend time with myself, right? And enjoy that time. Like at one point in my life, I probably wasn't okay just being alone. And so when me and you talk about, the reading of books, well, I hadn't read a book since I was in second grade until I started this journey where I'm at now with American Income. And ironically, I always tell people I won this program called the Accelerated Reader, right? You remember that program back in the day? They might not. So they still have it, I think. And you got to eat pizza once a week at Pizza Hut, right? So
I remember that. I remember now the benefits of reading. I remember prizes. I don't remember the name of Accelerated.
The prizes. I didn't read books.
I remember reading being encouraged and then having.
Yeah, it was encouraged through eating pizza. And I thought, man, if I can get one free pizza a week, I'm good. And I want it. And I never read the book, Mark. That's what's crazy. I only read the back of the book and took the test. They were multiple choice. And so I learned to cheat in life. But just imagine that same, just like that Jaguar, just like, wanting to win the pizza prize. Yeah. Like that was success to me. And so over time now, it's picking up the books, it's reading the books, it's developing myself. And more importantly, success to me is being able to share that and give it back to other people. Just like you asked me to be on this call today. I've been excited to be here because I have mentors in my life that have changed and impacted my life. And so success to me is, you mentioned our kids being on here. As a parent, success to me is wanting my daughter, and I tell her this all the time. Listen, I don't raise you to need me. I raise you to want to be around me. And so when you're an adult, if you want to be around me, that's success as a parent. But I don't want you to need me out there. And success as a leader is pouring into somebody else and watching them be able to go out and deliver. To me, that's fulfillment. I'm going to get the fulfillment out of that.
Definitely. Right?
And so over time, I guess that has changed. And I think some people got to go through all that. I think, a lot of that comes with experience. A lot of that comes with wisdom. And that's what I've learned through my life. And if I was to tell you success, that's how I define it is pouring into myself to pour back into others. And if I can help others get to that next level, then I think that I'll die a fulfilled man.
No, I fully agree with you. I think when you reach a certain level of accomplishing things that you want to do, you kind of reflect on the feeling you have of overcoming certain obstacles and getting to where you want to be. And I think that's when that shift happens, right? Like you want these things, you're aiming for these particular things that you want to have that you see as successful. And you can even see this a lot of times in like really wealthy people and celebrities and stuff. They kind of take this philosophical change that you see in them to where they become a giver, right? They become a giver instead of a getter kind of thing because they have now. And that's where the wanting to share with others comes from. I mean, when I was doing all my financial reading and education I was doing for myself, the idea for Read Me or Stay Broke sparked inside of me because I felt the empathy for wanting others to feel the way that I was feeling in a sense of empowerment, and that's when I really started feeling successful. When I wrote Read Me or Stay Broke, I didn't feel successful when it became a bestseller. I felt successful when I was speaking in Las Vegas for the 100 Black Men of America, giving a speech, and the kids in that organization were doing a competition based on my book and then trying to create a scholarship for themselves by winning that competition. But I knew that they had gotten the financial education through that experience at a young age. That's when I felt successful. I was sitting in the lunch area at the Las Vegas hotel, in the child area eating, and a young man came to me and asked to take a picture with me, and he was like, "You're the author of my favorite book." Yo, man, that's when I felt successful. I was like, wow, my book is your favorite. Like that, that made me so happy because I knew what he was going to be able to accomplish then, And I think that people, if you really ask, like, what do you want in life? I discovered that the kind of even there's a varied amount of answers, but if you look at what the two answers really are, they come down to happiness and financial security. People want financial security to feel safe, and then they want to feel happy. And what I've tried to do in my teachings and what I am kind of my consulting business is about is helping people reach those two things. Through Read Me or Stay Broke and financial education, I help people get financial security through deliberate self-improvement, collective success, and helping people understand what they're capable of and seeing the abilities of their mind and abilities of them as a person, and helping them be motivated by that fact. Happiness comes from that. Happiness comes from deliberate self-improvement, not from things. When you overcome obstacles, when you become the person you want to be, that's when you're really happy. And it's not going to be easy because there are things in your way, and the system is kind of set up to where you are not the priority. But if you look at yourself as a benefit to others, right, then you, like with my sons and with the people I try to educate, I see myself as the more I improve myself, the more people I'm able to help, and the more people I'm able to help, the more we all can help each other. That's why it's called that's why my community is called Collective Success, because we work together. People share benefits. We share our professions. We share our knowledge. And in that way, we all become better, And so that's what, success is to me, becoming the benefit, right? And then I think it ties really into life insurance, because being able to be successful and then setting up a way that success can go beyond you, putting yourself in a position, educating yourself about insurance and money, and then being a healthy, successful person, having a policy or policies, because most people don't know you can have more than one. You just have one. You can have more than one. And so being a benefit beyond yourself, I think that's real success. When others can say, my life was better because you were here, that's what I kind of chase. I chase that. I chase being able to be an impact and having an impact in other people's lives.
Well, you have. I can tell you that. And that's, Mark, why a child came up to you and said there's their favorite book is because when you wrote that book, you made it to where people like me and that child can understand it. I'm just telling you, that was one of the biggest things I appreciated, is the way, and I think I told you that, is the storyline of the book. And it kept me engaged, where like they would probably tell me I have ADHD nowadays if I was a kid, but I played outside, so I didn't have to worry about that. So, but absolutely, like, to capture my attention. So you're not trying it. One thing I'll hit on that you really like is, I was listening to you, and for those that are listening, you talked about stacking successes and experiences. And a saying that I always say is, everybody wants the glory, but they don't know the story.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Right. So we live in that flash pan society, the microwave society, where you can, at any glimpse, you're seeing the best of Mark Jackson's life, right? You're seeing little MJ over there and Ty practicing, right? But what people don't know is that's at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, they don't know that. Yeah.
Oh, that's the grind. I know that because I talked to you. They don't know those sleepless nights, those types of things. And so it's stacking. I practiced jiu-jitsu for years, and when you take somebody to the ground, if they've never been on the ground, the first thing they do is turn their back. That's a natural response as a human being, is to turn your back to the threat. And I think now we're taught so much that once we start to feel that friction, like maybe it's not meant to be, right? Maybe it's not meant to be, like, da-da-da. But you got to be able to turn your face to the opponent. I always tell people, last time I checked, my arms go this way and my legs go that way. They don't go behind me. Sure. And so when you get into something, or you start something, or you're facing challenges, don't turn your back to it. You got to go through it. And in the Army, they teach you when you get in an ambush that the first thing that you do is go into the ambush, right? You fight into the, you either, if you can't exit out of the ambush, you got to fight through the ambush. You got to turn and directly go into it. And that's how you ultimately, what we've just talked about to sum that up, is it's the experiences and stacking those in life that allow you to get to that piece, to get to that next level.
Oh, definitely. And we're gonna keep going on this. So what is your advice on achieving goals?
So great question. I would say the first advice, you know, it might seem cliche, is you got to write them down. I can tell you, you know, I know your mind probably goes 1,000 miles an hour. My mind goes 1,000 miles an hour. We probably get stoked. We got this thought in our mind and we're like, here's where it's going, right? First off, be careful not to share that with anybody, right? Because that's some dopamine in your mind that gets triggered when you do that. Like, I didn't know Mark was, you were starting Collective Success. We didn't have that conversation. So when you approached me about it, I'm like, okay. So you probably had wrote that down that, hey, this is something I want to do. And then you started building a strategy and a game plan to accomplish it. So when it comes to goals, the first thing you got to do is you got to write it down. The second thing I would tell you is begin with an end in mind. So I didn't say that. They got like Think and Grow Rich, those types of books. Like, they tell you this, okay? There's nothing original that I say, right? I stole it all. School lied to me, Mark. They told me I couldn't cheat, and I've been cheating in business my whole entire career.
I want to piggyback on your first point right quick, and I'm going to remind on the second point so you can keep going. But writing it down, man, like you say, it's cliche, but this is what I tell my son so that he can know what I mean when you say write it down. I say, if you can't make yourself write it down, you ain't gonna be able to make yourself do none of the rest of that stuff.
Facts.
You know?
Facts.
I'm gonna have the deliberate action thought to grab the pen, write it down. Everything else you're gonna need to do after you is gonna write it down is gonna take way more energy than writing it down. So if you can't do that first one, don't even worry about the rest.
Yeah, you can. You nail it, and it's not what Mark says. Patrick says. I believe Harvard did a study on this, Mark, of like 100 graduates that they had write down their goals, they had 100. They took 100 kids, and they had half of them not write down their goals, the other half, you know. They did this study. In 10 years, they came back and visited, and like over 90% of the people that wrote down their goals accomplished them. And it was like 10% or something of people that didn't write down their goals accomplished their goals. So
know why that worked is because delayed gratification is the key to success. But delayed gratification comes with working a plan. Like you said a minute ago, when people get, you know, a little bump in the road or something, they get discouraged and they leave or they stop because it requires a little bit more effort exertion. But when you have something written down, like you said, the second point you made, begin with the end in mind. So when you write it down and you try to make your plan, you get the beginning and what you want to accomplish. In the middle is how you do the work. But when you get discouraged, looking at that end goal is going to push you through. But if you don't write it down, you can't look at it. You know what I mean? You can't consistently envision the positive outcome that's worth all the rest of the work.
For sure. You know, an example to elaborate on that, like an easy way, I think that, like, let's say if you're a kid and you want to do, your vision is I want to be in the NFL, right? So I've got this vision of being in the NFL. Well, your goals are benchmarks along the way. So you got to start thinking about, how am I going to get to the NFL? So if I want to get to the NFL, then I need to do what? I need to practice every day, right? So every week you got to lay out like what specific things, what details do I need to improve on? Well, if I'm trying to play halfback, I better be fast, right?
Yeah.
So I better work on my speed. I better work on my agility, right? Nowadays, if you want to play halfback, you better be able to catch the ball, right?
Yep.
And so now, because you have a vision of that's where you want to go, that's where the work begins. And now you've got goals along the way where, you know, if you go, well, I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan. Like, if you look at the story of Emmitt Smith, that guy wasn't supposed to be what some would say, I mean, he broke the record, Walter Payton's record. Like, he wasn't built necessarily to break that record, right? But he had it written down. He still has it to this day. Hall of Fame. He had it written down. Super Bowls, where he went and played, where the Super Bowl was going to be in college. It's a phenomenal story. I love stuff like that, success stories. But the details of him having all the everything written down, he had a game plan from a very young age to get there. And he just executed on it.
I think, too, you make great points about the stair steps. Like, so that's why even in Read Me or Stay Broke, you know, I put the steps to becoming financially successful. Lowering your debt, raising your credit on purpose, saving some of your money so that now you qualify to overcome financial discrimination. And now you can borrow to get a house, borrow to invest, borrow to get stocks. You can have your life insurance to protect all those things. But there's a process you can go through, and we're not taught the process. So sometimes we're just like, I want to get rich. That the reason why it doesn't happen is not because you don't have the passion and you don't have the desire and you don't have the urge, and you definitely for sure got the need to have more money, but you don't know the steps, you know? And I think that I didn't know the steps, but knowing what I wanted, writing it down and going through it, you know, I started reading. And as I started reading, I started learning the steps. So modeling, right, or following someone who has done what you want to do, you know, I think when we were younger, matter of fact, to school, right? Like you said about school, what can you not do on your test or your homework? You can't copy. You can't cheat, right? So you're taught that by following or learning from someone else that knows how to do something that you don't know how to do. In school, you're copying, you're cheating, you're not doing it right. But when you get out here in the real world, there are people who have already been successful. You know, you can copy what they have accomplished to be able to become successful. Using your sports analogy, look at all the NBA players right now that wear Kobe Bryant shoes, Devin Booker. Yep. You know what I mean? Look at all the ones that work with Kobe. James Harden worked with Kobe. Russell Westbrook worked with Kobe. Kawhi Leonard worked with Kobe, right? Jason Tatum worked with Kobe. And look at all of them now, MVPs, going to the finals, you know what I'm saying? Setting records, dropping 50 points a game, right? They followed a model of someone. Even Kobe says he modeled his game in the beginning after Michael Jordan. He saw the best person, and not only did he say, I want to be like that person, but I want to be better than that person. And he came really close, right? So for me, when I'm doing my business and stuff, I mean, like, I have a book right here. Right? Brain. I want to know some more about my brain. I'm gonna read from this PhD lady about the brain that I have to use every day to accomplish the things that I have to accomplish. And I'm gonna try and get better at having something that I have in my control and in my power to accomplish more and more of my goals. So I think when it comes to achieving goals, like you said, one, you want to write it down, but even before writing it down, you want to have some, right? So sometimes I ask people, you know, what are your goals? And they say, I don't know. And like I tell my sons, that ain't an answer, right? My kids know. If I ask them anything, if they say, I don't know, you about to stand here till you put in some cognitive effort to give me a answer to what I asked you. For real, man. You know, so for anybody, first, if you want to accomplish something, want something, and want something more than what the world is showing you. We told you success earlier. We thought success was the car, the house, the money, and all that stuff like that. Man, you got to set your own goals first. Who do you want to be? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to have? And then you come from your own personal desires. Then you write down what you want to have. Then you write where you want to be. I'm here. This is here. I don't know what's here. But you know what there is? There's an abundance of information. There's resources like us. There are people you can talk to. And like I said, there's people who are doing what you want to do. Try and see not what they're doing, but how they did it. And like you talked about earlier, the quiet hours. Try and see if you can find a book, a biography, or something that shows you what used to go on in the quiet hours, you know, when no one was watching. Because like you said, everyone wants the glory, but no one wants to know the story, or they can't see the story. And if you can find out what was going on in that story, man, I tell my son all the time, watch you some Kobe. Because there's a clip right now of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant doing the exact same move. There's a cut up that somebody did, and it's the exact same stuff. But guess what? Kobe Bryant's still 4-time on the all-scoring list. He still got 5 championships. It does not know all your moves from Mike. He don't care because Kobe Bryant was executing them. So if you get your life in order, you get rich, you get wealthy, you get successful, you have great eating habits, great healthy habits, and you become, it does not matter who you learned that from, you probably should really thank them for being the way they were to help you become the way you are, but you still get all the benefits of following that example.
Absolutely, man. You know, it cracks me up when you said that if my boys ask me a question, right? And,
if I ask them,
or ask them a question, right? My dad used to say, well, who do I need to ask? Who knows the answer? You know, so who do I need? If you don't know the answer, who do I need to go ask?
This is the problem, man. Like you said before, we live in this microwave world, right? And the reason why I feel like it's good and it's bad, right? One, there's a lot more people are becoming successful because a lot more people are sharing the secrets of what they learned just to create content. So you could become aware of a lot of stuff that people weren't aware of before, you know? But at the same time, there's still something to be said for deliberate self-improvement, becoming the person and acquiring the habits, doing the reading, doing the deliberate practice, failing forward until you succeed. Because once you have that information, that knowledge, that skill set, it can't be taken away from you, right? I can't take your ability to speak English away from you. I can't take driving away from you, right? Those are embedded in your mind. You can execute those skills on demand. But flipping property is the same way, right? Being able to invest in stocks is the same way. You know, being strong, being healthy, they're the same way. It's the same acquisition of the skill set that you can keep. But a lot of these kids out here, or people in general, just because you have access to the internet, just because you have the ability to Google something, that doesn't mean that you're intelligent. It doesn't mean you're smart. It doesn't mean you have the information. Because the information is available is a very easy misconception to think I can go look versus I know, right? You always want to use the ability to go look, but some stuff, man, bring it all the way in and make it a skill, make it a knowledge set that you can not only pass on to other people, but that you can use on your own all the time. You know, when they say I don't know, it's because they've grown up in this world where they didn't have to know. I remember our teacher used to tell us that we couldn't use calculator on our math test because we now always gonna have a calculator in our hand. And now we have a calculator in our hand all the time. These kids, the kids now are able to just use their calculator on their test because they don't have to retain the information. And that kind of is a slippery slope sometimes when you talk about other kinds of knowledge that you need to have.
Absolutely. You know, those are all great points. I think the last one, Mark, that I would tell you on that same question, and we didn't really hit on it, would be execution.
Ooh, nice.
Right? So when it comes to your goals, this is that part you were talking about, the internet and the information. You know, I call them success zombies, right? So you got a success zombie, got all the information. They're ready, right? They're like, man, I'm reading the books. And this is a common question, like, what book do I need to read? Well, first, like, where are you going and what are you executing on? Because along the journey, you'll find the books that you need to read as you go through it. Like when I set out in 2012 to become a business owner and kind of jump into the entrepreneurial journey, as I talked about, kind of unexpectedly, right?
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot to offer. I had a good attitude. I was coachable, so I had a mentor that would coach me, so I was quick to implement and execute, right? And it's like I was willing to work hard, like the effort part of it, right? I was willing to work hard. Here's what I didn't know when I started, Mark. I had a vision. I had goals of what I wanted to do as a businessman. At that point, I could see myself in a suit. At that point, you know, I was ready to do this, but I didn't see that in 16 months later, that the guy that brought me in and was mentoring me was going to retire. I didn't know that, right? And so that's how I ended up in North Carolina from Springfield, Missouri. What I didn't know was 5 months in that I got an opportunity to get promoted. And so I always tell people, you gotta work for the position that you want. Now, 5 months was to what we call an MGA contract in our business. That was a quick promotion. Like you're a business owner. I've only been doing it 5 months. Had an opportunity. That opportunity was 2 hours away from my house. Wife,
wow.
Private nursing school. My daughter's 5 years old, 6 years old at that time. You know, thankful to my wife and my daughter. They made a lot of sacrifice for me to be here, for us to be here. So I literally slept on an office floor, and twice a week I'd go to the gym and I'd shower in the gym and everything in the mornings, right? And so, but I slept on the floor. I only sleep. I didn't know that. When I moved to North Carolina, I loaded up my car, right? I had my car, left my wife and daughter behind halfway across the United States of America. You know, drove over to North Carolina, spent almost 9 months in North Carolina without my wife and without my daughter. I didn't know when I started my journey and had a vision to be a businessman, to have a journey to change people's lives and change generations in my family. That was my vision. It wasn't anybody else's vision, right? I just knew that that's what it was going to be. So I had to wake up every day. I had to do the work required. I slept on a floor for almost 9. I had a house. I had a nice house.
Quiet hours.
House with 2 cars. You know, nice cars. I had a Harley. I had what my time was a life, right? And so, but I was willing to do that for the bigger picture. It took me like a couple of years of what I would call chaos, so to speak, where most people wouldn't be doing. I see people, we work from home now. Like they can't even get through the littlest challenge. And I'm like, you know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, like, what are we doing? What are we teaching here? And so the reason I share that with you is that all come from, I just showed up every day and executed. I knew what it was going to be. I used to tell my wife, I don't know how. I'll figure out the how. What I got to do is put one foot in front of the other.
Sure.
I got to trust in my mentor. I got to trust in the guidance that I'm being given and the coaching that and if I put one foot in front of the other, right, just like in a march, it's, you know, David Goggins says you got to win every second, right? You got to win every second because it only takes 1 second for that brain to check out.
Yeah, for sure.
If you let your brain check out, then you got a lot of regret that you're leaving behind. And so I just never wanted to live with that regret that I had opportunity, and I had what we call opportunity unlimited. And so still to this day, man, I'm putting one foot in front of the other and just still executing. I'm nowhere close to where I want to be at, nowhere close to where I'm going and we're going. And so, you know, having a relationship with you just gets one step closer. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for execution. I can tell you that.
And like you said, when it comes to achieving your goals, like we said, you got to have one, you got to write it down.
Yep.
You got to put the end in mind. You got to execute. And then I want to say one last thing on that. You have to know why. You have to know, right? For me, ever since maybe I was 14 years old, I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to be a good dad. My dad wasn't around when I was young. I was raised by my mom, and I had 3 younger siblings than me. And I just remember life experiences where I wish that, you know, my dad would have been there or my dad could have been around. So for me, even when I was young, I was like, I want to be a good dad, you know, and almost, I mean, ain't even almost all, everything I do is to be a good dad. This right here is to be a good dad. You know, I always want to be a good father. When I was in the Air Force, I had goals. I wanted to be able to provide more for my family. And I couldn't get a second job when I was in the military until I finished all of my requirements and my training. So I set a goal: Airman of the Year, Airman of the Quarter, early promotion. I got all those goals, but the why was not for the shine. It wasn't for the award. I was trying to get those goals accomplished so I can get a second job, so I can provide more money for my son and for my family. You know, when I was here, divorced, broke in Oklahoma, no family around me, living in an apartment that didn't have a bedroom, and I'm sitting down and I just want more. I had done the American dream, right? I had gone to the military, working for the Department of Defense. Yeah, I'm like, I have a safe, secure, steady job. Why do I not still have money, you know? And I was just like, man, I want something better. I can't, like, how are my kids going to look at me when I look at them later and I just say, you know, I didn't try hard enough. You know what I mean? And so they were my goal. I got to get y'all out of this apartment. I have to get custody of you. I have to become the person that I really, really want to become. Not for me, but for you. You know what I mean? So that you can see a good example. I got my college degree for my kids. Like, I got the knowledge, but I never wanted to be a hypocrite and be like, you got to go to school, you got to go to college, you got to get your degree, and not be able to show them that I had done it as an example, you know. And even now, I want my sons to be able to be successful in basketball. I want them to be able to be successful in school. It's my job to get them to 18 years old and make sure they make it there and then have their back once they get there. But I want to continuously show them what it looks like to be going all in on what you believe you can accomplish and showing them deliberate self-improvement in action. So you have to know what your why is on why you're trying to achieve your goals, and it'll push you through everything else.
Yeah, for sure, man. And that why will tie to your desire. And so, you know, desire is the starting point of all achievement, is what they say.
Yep.
And that's what fuels you, lights you up. You know, everybody wants things. You know, my not to quote my old man again, but he's an old cowboy. So he says, boy, want in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up the fastest. You know, that's what he would say. So I learned that I better desire it with him. So
yes, sir.
you better desire. I know like Mark, he desires basketball. That's why he gets up early in the morning and puts in the work. He's got, you know, you've shared the vision with him. You shared the why. And so he desires to do that. But absolutely, man. Nailed it, I think. I don't think there's anything else to add to that.
Well, man, I appreciate you for being here. Thank you so much. Everyone, you can follow Patrick, like you said, DM questions, follow your page. There's a wealth of information that you can find, policies, protect yourself, protect your future, protect your family. I thank everyone for being here. We have to do this again, man. Like we can get like into a specific policy or something, or, you know, I just really enjoyed this. So I think another one of these would be cool. We'll make sure we make a flyer for it, get it on the books, because I really enjoy these conversations. And I think it's so beneficial that people are here to you know, we were eating pizza the other day, and I'm like, man, we have such a good conversation, you know, but it's just me and you know, and I think,
kick us out.
Yeah, it's cool, man. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.
All right, my man.